Thank you for your patience, everyone, as we wait for Mike to get back in. Mr. Christensen, there he is. Great. All right. Mr. Bright?
Present.
Yep,
Yes,
here.
I'm here. I was muted.
Mr. Christensen?
I'm here.
Mr. Derricks?
Here.
Ms. Fair?
Hello, present.
Ms. Jones?
Present.
Ms. Tower?
Here.
And Chair is here. So all 7 board members are here this evening. We will go ahead and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I do have a flag here, so I'll go ahead and present that if we need to be. All right. I pledge allegiance
To
the
Flag.
United
of
States
the
of
States of
America
America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
that stands
for which it stands,
And
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty
and
and justice for all.
Thank you. And I've asked Director Bryant to share a mission statement this evening.
Pardon?
I've
Are
asked
you
you
ready?
to share our mission.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is educate, inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you. You've all got the agenda packet in front of you, I assume, and there's the agenda in front of you. I will look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. That was Janie.
Yep, in a second.
Second, Bryant.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Jim?
Jim, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Christensen?
Come on. Come on. Come on.
You're there.
Aye. Can you hear me? There I am.
Yeah.
Yes. Aye.
Okay. Ms. Tower?
Yes.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Fair?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Derricks?
aye.
And chair votes aye. So the agenda is passed as presented. The first thing on our agenda this evening, oh, Holly?
Yeah, I'm not able to find the consent agenda. It's not showing up in board book.
Well, I have mine. That's weird because I have mine here and it,
I'll take a look at it too.
Was
you
yours
know what, I just clicked on it and it wasn't there, but I did print it out earlier today.
Right.
I don't have a
I'm not
print.
finding it either. It's showing it's not available.
Okay.
Yep. Same deal.
Lisa, I'll look for the copy and I'll post it right from here.
Do we want to pause for a minute so that gets up and running?
Yeah.
Okay. How about as he's doing that, we can at least do the recognitions and upcoming events? Does anybody have anything that they would like to share?
Can I jump in real quick and share one announcement and then I'll get back to the posting?
Yep.
The administrative team has developed a listening session that's available to the community. The listening session will be regarding the distance learning plan feedback from last year, as well as brainstorming for the upcoming school year. If you'd like to share, you can email Lisa Stigurda by June 18th at 5 p.m. The actual meeting is on June 18th from 6 to 8 p.m. I'll be sending a notice out to all parents and staff members after the meeting today.
Yes. Okay, I wasn't passing off, but I will. Well, I got plenty of time.
Okay, make sure that we are on mute so that the admin team is having a listening session for public comment regarding the distance learning, June 18th, 6 to 8. Great. Any other recognitions and upcoming events?
I'm not on mute. I'm being naughty. I'm not on mute. Okay.
One thing that I will mention is that a huge thank you to our high school team for putting on a really great graduation ceremony, and it really brought the community together in ways that are pretty remarkable. So once again, thank you to Mr. Minich and his team at the high school for putting together a really great graduation, and for the crew who put it together as well and produced it. That was really great. And congratulations to all of our graduates. We wish you well. We wish it didn't end this way, but super glad we were able to walk this walk with you. Other recognitions and upcoming events. Anybody else have anything? All right, the consent agenda is not working yet.
Almost.
Okay.
We could probably start going through the report section as I just find the document here.
Should we do that, or public comment is next?
Sounds good.
Okay. I have had 2 requests for public comment this week. Reverend Greg Bolt and Chaz Neal. And just a reminder that public comment, we expect comments to be limited to 3 minutes per person. That we will, we have to be respectful and maintain confidentiality in terms of not identifying any current or former students, their families, or staff by name. And that the superintendent and/or school board chair may provide a response outlining steps the school district has taken or will take to address their concerns. So, Mr. Bolt, are you on the line? And if so, then you are free to begin speaking.
Yes, I am on the line. My name. Hello?
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Greg Bolt. Many of you know me. I'm a parent of 2 elementary age children in Red Wing Public School District. And I'm extremely grateful for the education that the Red Wing School District has offered my children so far. I want to make sure that as they matriculate through the school district, that their curriculum that is used helps teach them about racism, intersectionality, and privilege in the United States, and particularly how our community has benefited or perpetrated these systems. I'm commenting to demand an immediate pledge from the Red Wing School District to overhaul and institute a curriculum dedicated to anti-racist education, and the release of a plan about how exactly the district intends to educate students about racism and uplift and promote the work of diverse scholars, historians, and activists. I also request that you include inclusivity training for staff so teachers understand the subtle ways that they perpetuate the systems of injustice and think holistically about how they include all students, race, gender, ethnicity, from bell ringers to lessons to the images they use, the curriculum and text they select, the music they play, films, the exit tickets out the door, and assessments, and including coaches, advisors for sports and activities, and how practices are scheduled, thinking about transportations, and promoting engagement with all students. I am willing to help make this a reality, and I'm willing to work to make sure it happens. I also want to say, as I was preparing for this meeting, I looked through all of the teachers that I could find pictures of, and I saw 2 obvious people of color. I know that they hired a person of color for the at Burnside for next year. But as I was looking out, my kids were sitting over my shoulder, and they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking for teachers." And my daughter said, "Well, you won't find any black ones here, and that's not good." So our kids are hearing, and our kids are listening, and my 2 very white kids want diversity in their life from their teachers, and they want people of color in authoritative positions of authority, and they don't have them now. And I want not only for our white teachers to think about how they interact with the world, but I also want the district to do a better job of recruiting Black, Indigenous, people of color to work in our district. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Carson, do you have anything that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, and Greg, our customary practice is after
Yeah, what was that, Scar?
that I just provide a very brief response explaining what our plan is for the future. And we did receive probably about 30 or 40 email messages with very similar content as what Greg described. It's a critical topic for us to consider, and we are working on some areas where we know we need to do better, and that includes some of our recruitment efforts. It includes staff development possibilities, curriculum, and other particular areas. So all I'm asking Greg and others to do is to stay engaged. We would also love to have some people join our district advisory committee because that committee will be a sounding board for a lot of the work that we'll be presenting to the school board at a workshop session in September. So Greg, maybe you and I can touch base after this meeting, and I can make sure that your name is on our list for the district advisory committee.
Sure. I would also request a look into AmazeWorks. It was a Minneapolis company that did a bias training for me as part of my work with Reading Corps this year. So that's a local organization that could help with some of this training already. And I'm certainly willing to voice, you know me, I'm willing to work and to be a part of that. So, yep. Yeah,
and you can include that contact info. If you wouldn't mind just sending me a separate email just with that contact info, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Reverend Bolt. Chaz Neal, are you on our call? Chaz Neal? Is there a Chaz Neal on our phone call? All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next item on our agenda, which is school board reports.
And by the way, before we start going over those reports, I did display an updated consent agenda on the website. So if you don't see it now, you may need to refresh your computer so that you can see the latest, greatest information.
Great. Thank you. So back to board reports. Finance Committee. Anybody have any updates from the Finance Committee?
Well, I don't know what happened to Mike. Oh, is he there? Okay. I don't think we'll go over too much, except that you'll see reflected in the budget
Working on it, I think.
on the next agenda item that we We asked staff to plan for next year's budget as if we would lose 130 students, roughly 10 per grade. So I'm sure we'll discuss that in detail later.
Okay,
Yeah, thanks, Heidi.
anything from the operations committee?
You're muted, Arlen.
Pam, Mike was trying to get in.
Oh, Mike,
Well, thank you, Heidi.
I'm
I
sorry.
got in late, maybe. I don't know. Really slow. Getting choppy service here, so.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Mike. I'm not hearing
But
you
as-
very well.
Yeah, I'm not seeing very well, so. Anyway, Heidi did the job for me. She did a fine job. We'll be talking about it later in today's meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, back to operations. Any updates from operations?
We met before our last meeting, gave an update there. I don't think we had anything else at this time. Carson may update us on Jim Patterson's, if he met with Jim Patterson. I don't know if he did or not. He wanted to meet with the committee, but I determined that we should first get a written proposal to Carson if there's anything he was looking for. So we'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Any updates from personnel committee?
Madam Chair, yeah, nothing too much. I guess I would just, you have presented in the packet kind of the updates, but I know we're kind of struggling with how to organize principal negotiations and some of this all together with the summertime and some other, I know we need to start custodian too. So we are just continuing on. And I did want to remind Mike, he's going to sit in on me on a district, the LMC committee, because we are looking at, I had asked Amy and Kirsten to bring up this process for post-employment assets, to just bring it up to that committee to make sure they were aware and to get some more information. So just know that I just asked Mike to represent me at the LMC while I'm gone for that. And they're aware that that's coming to them too. We already had that meeting scheduled, so it seemed like a natural place to bring it first. So that's all I got though.
Thank you. Legislative and Policy Committee. Anyone? Any update from legislative?
That's me.
Heidi, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah. You think we'd know better by now. We were supposed to have a meeting earlier today, but that got canceled, so we will be meeting later in July. As far as the legislative update from the MSBA, there is a special session, of course, that was called on Friday by the governor. It may last a week, which is unusual. And the new education policy bill is House File 33, HF 33. So if you want to follow that, that will be heard in committee tomorrow afternoon. There are provisions for clarifying contracts for fuel or transportation, vaping instruction for middle school students, districts conducting a functional behavior assessment, special ed student piece. And so some of that sort of practical stuff that needs to kind of carry forward under the pandemic circumstances and the work that just needs to get done. We do need to apply as a district for the CARES Act funding. And all of that is in an update that everybody should have received earlier today. And so we're carrying forward as best we can, and we'll see how this special session rolls out. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you. Any other committees that people would like to report on? Is there anything from GCED that we'd like to be updated on?
Yeah, I attended the GCED meeting last month, and I stepped in for Arlen at his request, and we discussed pay scale and pay amount for each member district and how we compare Red Wing competitors in that. And we also looked at what we get charged from GCED and for that, and I thought it was interesting. We talked about how we share buildings and grounds, and we share janitorial. So some of it gets muddy, but I was really pleased to kind of dig deeper into those costs, and I'd like to share them with the board at some time. That makes sense, so I can update everybody on the amount of money we spend going through GCED, right or wrong, just the amount of money that is spent. And some of the other things that were brought up, we talked about Sherry Johnson's evaluation, and that will be sometime in December, we're looking. She has not had a regular system of evaluations done through GCED and the board. So we talked about tentatively trying to put something together in August, because there's no formal evaluation for the director position that she holds. It's not a superintendent per se, it's not a principal. So she doesn't have a standard form that board, so it's kind of been put together. So that's why it hasn't happened consistently. But we talked about doing it in August, which I said was too advantageous. Let's try December, and like superintendents are evaluated. And the board agreed to that, or we all agreed to that. So that's something that we'll be looking at in the future. And Arlen, anything you want to add?
I think you covered a lot of stuff that's been discussed over the past, and you got into more on Sherry Johnson evaluation for her. That's in the works and stuff. And I think it's good that you're getting a feel for what's going on there too. There's a lot of great things happening at GCED, and there's a lot of money, but I don't know if everything's what we want on our end or not. But I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't know what you had there, but I appreciate your update. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's iceberg for me to kind of delve deeper into some of how the expenses are. It was very clear cut. It was nothing like, oh, what is this? It was just interesting. So I hope to inform the board later on more of that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other board reports? Jim, you had something you would like to share or question?
I do, Madam Chair. Thank you. Is this a proper time to ask a question for one of the committee members?
Sure.
Okay. This is directed towards Janie and Mike. Mike, you're going to be on that committee. I have some questions and concerns about the topic of that. If I could share that with you sometime, and I don't know when your meeting is. If that's if I can do that ahead of time of your meeting, so you can find out information.
Yeah, sure. If I'm off mute, let me know, or send it to Janie, and Janie can get it to me, because she's going to get me some more information as well, right, Janie?
Yep,
About
either
what
way.
we've been
Yep.
doing.
Yep.
Okay.
I can give them that update when I talk to them about why the meeting's happening for LMC too. So,
When
and
is
if
the
you want
meeting?
to share any next in 2 weeks, I believe
Okay.
yeah. So we got a little time, but yeah, either let me know and I'll pass it on to Mike, or I'm sure you can talk to him about it too. So.
Thank you.
What is the date exactly, Janie?
Let me look it up one more time. And if somebody else has other questions while I look, that's fine. But I believe it's like the 24th or 25th. I don't know if Amy French is on the call or Jackie, but I took it off of my calendar now. So.
Is a Wednesday.
24th or 25th. I'll look it up again. I'll put it in the comments when I look it up. How about okay?
Jackie says it's the 24th.
There you go. LMC is 24th.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Anything else on board reports? All right, seeing nothing, we'll move our agenda along to reports. Superintendent Anderson.
I'll just go over a few of the highlights. First of all, the staff recognition ceremony is typically held at the end of each year. Due to COVID, though, I announced earlier that the yearly recognition will occur this summer or fall, depending on when people can gather again. That's always a really nice event, honoring those who are retiring or have worked in the school district for 25 years. We are actively starting planning for fall of 2020. Administrators are meeting at least weekly, and we're looking at different options. One for distance learning, social distancing, and hybrid possibilities, as well as being back in session. During the week of June 15th, which is this week, we expect additional guidance from the Minnesota Department of Education and the Minnesota Department of Health about possibilities this fall, but final direction from the state will not occur until June or July. So obviously we need to engage school board members and community members in these planning efforts. And so we're hoping to come up with some background information for the board to consider in July.
Superintendent Anderson, Holly has a question or a comment.
Sure.
Is there a committee put together for recognizing staff that are hired? Or is that just kind of a random thing that people work?
We do not have a committee set up because everything is memorialized in one of our handbooks. And so we have a specific method for determining who qualifies to be recognized and what we do for them. So in the past, we've had, a banquet on one of the last duty days, the teachers have, because, a lot of these folks are teachers and they invite their friends in for a nice breakfast. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to look like this summer or fall, but I did ask Jeff Switcomb to at least include some time in the schedule, and then we can figure it out.
So
I will mention, oh, sorry, go ahead, Holly.
no, I was just clarifying that it's not really been consistent throughout the year. It's just kind of that whatever somebody decides might be a good idea that year.
I wouldn't say that. We've had a pretty consistent plan for the last, I would say, 6 to 8 years. We've kind of followed the same plan as far as having a breakfast on one of those days, and then recognizing each person in the ceremony. So before that, it was very different, but at least for the last 6 or 8 years, that's what we've done.
Okay.
And I'll just share too, like we did last year from the board, I do have cards for each of our retirees. If we were sitting around a table right now, I'd be passing them down for everyone to sign. So what I will do is I will leave them at the district office, and then the next week, if you find yourself up at the high school and could pop into the district office to sign those cards, that would be wonderful. I also have a card for our senior school board members, so if you could sign that. Some of you already have when I've seen you, but if not, then sign that at the high school as well. Holly, another comment or question?
Yeah, I'm curious, Carson, why would you assign Jess Whitcomb that responsibility?
Well, because the assumption is that, the board will approve her hire as the Director of Teaching and Learning. And so I wanted to make sure that plan was in the mix as far as planning for August.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about why would that job responsibility fall on the Director of Teaching and Learning?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the way I viewed it. Well, first of all, Joe has been responsible for that in the past,
Okay.
Joe Jaworski. And this coming year, it'll be in conjunction, most likely, with our staff development workshop sessions. And so I want Jess to at least find some time within that week when it makes the most sense. So, people can attend the gathering.
Okay, I was just wondering why you would assign it that way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I have a couple more things to highlight. First of all, evaluations. I know we have a teacher evaluation review or discussion in August at a board session. However, I believe, or we believe, that improving our evaluation processes for everyone in the district needs to be an important priority. And so recently I attended a virtual conference regarding principal evaluations. And we're also exploring options for conducting evaluations for other positions. So not only the evaluation model, but also any software that might be needed to effectuate those evaluations. So I'm kind of excited actually about that work. And then finally, and I realize this might change, as we go discuss this at the upcoming meeting section, but when I wrote the packet, the goal was to have a board self-evaluation in June, discussion about fall opening in July at a workshop session, teacher evaluation in August, and then equity planning in September. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Superintendent Anderson on any of those?
I do, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
On August, could we call that district evaluations instead of just one area of our operation?
Sure.
Since he talked about principles, I mean, that just says one part of our operation. Maybe, and he alluded to the fact looking at the overall evaluation process.
Yeah, that's no problem. I can just change it to maybe just say evaluations or personnel evaluations to make it more general.
Sure.
Good point. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which it's still not linking on the board book, but on your school email, the consent agenda has been sent out to everybody. Does everybody have that? I should say,
I got it online.
So it had to be removed.
okay, so you still don't have it? Holly, do you have a question? Holly first, do you have a question?
I was just waiting for you to, then I will.
Okay, Arlen?
I was just gonna say the evaluation came up in my board book in PDF version, so
The consent agenda?
Evaluation.
the consent agenda
Right.
came up in the,
Yeah.
in that version, so it's updated there, so.
Okay. Great. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda? Or, yeah,
Before that, Kurt, I'd like to point out one thing. Earlier, when I posted the document, of course, there was a list of personnel. And then we did interview people for the licensed school nurse position late last week. Joni Gorman did notify us today that she would like the position that we offered to her. And so that was the change in the consent agenda. I added Joni Gorman to the new hire list. So I just wanted to explain why it was different. And of course, in the process of taking it down and putting it back on, I hadn't released the updated version. So I'm sorry about that, but it should be there now.
and does anybody have anything they'd like to pull from the consent agenda? Holly?
I'd like to pull item for discussion.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'd like to pull item number 4 for discussion.
Okay. Anybody else have any other things they'd like to pull? Arlen?
I didn't hear what Heidi, what Holly said here on consent agenda, I'd like the new hires pulled, please.
New hires. So we want new hires pulled and is that what oh, and you want number 4, reassignments pulled?
Correct, yeah.
And Janie?
If I could set a question on the furloughs, like a general question, does that still need to pull it off?
Typically, that's what should happen with a consent agenda. If there's going to be a question or discussion, that we should pull it. And so that's no problem. We can pull that as well.
Number 6 too on the furloughs, please.
Okay, anything else? Any other changes to the consent agenda?
I think we got them all.
Yeah, Pam, I'm sorry, I wanted reassignments pulled, not new hires. So you can, I'm good with new hires.
Okay. All right, so number 4 and number 6 are pulled. Anything else? All right, so I'm looking for a motion to accept the consent agenda minus number 4 and number 6.
Janie will make that motion.
Mike will make that motion.
Mike Hubbard,
Janie will
second that. All right, so now we'll tackle number 4. Holly, do you want to speak to that, or Arlen?
I can go first, Arlen. It doesn't, you can, if you want to go, you can. All right, he's rocking.
I don't really care either way.
Okay, well, I can start it off. I've got several questions on this item. My first is the Director of Teaching and Learning a reassignment, or is it a new hire? Please help me understand that.
Yeah, and my understanding is that at least recently, if there was a current employee in the district who was hired for a new position, that person has been listed as a reassignment. So that's why it's listed in that section. It's really the hiring of an internal person for a new position.
But it's not a new position. I mean, it is a new position.
Yeah, because we didn't have a Director of Teaching and Learning this past year, correct?
Change the job description for this Director of Teaching and Learning from the last Director of Teaching and Learning?
I missed the first part of your question, Holly.
Did you change the job description for the former Director of Teaching and Learning for this Teaching and Learning job?
Yes, I did.
Did you change the qualifications for the position?
Yeah, I changed actually quite a few things, qualifications as well as responsibilities. I can't remember if I changed skills and knowledge. I think I did. So it's a completely revamped position description.
Okay. Arlen, if you want to ask, I don't want to hog it, and then I can jump in if you don't tackle the question I have.
Okay. If that all right, Madam Chair?
Please.
Okay. I guess I have some concerns. I don't know what we're hiring this position at, what the job description actually is for sure. I got some major concerns after seeing some emails on what that position is paying. And I guess I'd like some clarity to this a little bit, if I could. That's all.
Sure. I'll try to answer that for you. We've gone through several iterations over the past 9 years since I've been here in terms of the teaching and learning department. I won't go through all the details from 6, 8, 9 years ago, but 2 years ago, we had a director of teaching and learning and a director of support services on staff here in the district office. This past year, due to Joe Jazerski's resignation, we changed that so that we had a director of support services and a curriculum coordinator. And then I believe it was in maybe the second meeting in May or maybe the first meeting in June, we discontinued the curriculum coordinator position and essentially took many of those aspects and put them in the same position description called the Director of Teaching and Learning. So we've gone through all sorts of iterations. This past year, we had a Director of Support Services and a Curriculum Coordinator. Next year, moving forward, we would have a Director of Teaching and Learning.
Jim, you had a question?
I thought Janie was ahead of me. No? Okay, I saw the chat. I said I thought you were. So.
I believe that was from before, but I
Oh,
can go if
maybe.
you want to.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to just talk about the same topic here a little bit. It's I think it's whatever I'm going to say is nothing to do with Jess, because I think she's a tremendous young lady. My couple questions I have are: how many people applied for this position, and how many did you interview?
I'll answer that, and then I'll also answer Arlen's question about the compensation, because I neglected to do that. So we had 12 applicants for the position. We interviewed 2 of them, both internal candidates, and the salary amount I offered Jeff $102,500 for the position. So 102,500. And then, of course, as part of the district director's contract, then she'd receive the same benefits as the district director. And I did, as an extra on the board webpage, I did ask, or I did include the district director contract for reference, if that might be helpful.
Yeah, I saw that was added here late after the agenda and stuff was posted.
Correct.
Did the job description, as that email we received, was not on the posting? Is that normal?
I'm not sure if Amy always includes a position description or not with those mailings. But I've been in the process of adjusting multiple position descriptions for weeks, if not months. So I don't believe that was included on the job posting.
Okay, and then when Lisa got hired, how many people applied and how many were interviewed?
When Lisa Stegurda was hired?
Yes.
Oh.
I don't know if you know the number, but would it be fair to say just about everybody got an interview?
Yeah, I think everyone was offered an interview, but I don't know if everyone accepted it or showed up. That part I don't know.
Sure.
And
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it was, and this, please don't quote me on this, I think it was about 10 to 15 people who went through the interview process for Lisa's job.
Okay. So why wouldn't you interview the other 10 or offer interviews for the other 10 applicants?
Yeah,
let me finish my question, because we're being asked constantly, and we've talked about it in finance and others about getting people to come to Red Wing to interview, to work, and all that. Why wouldn't we want to interview somebody that meets the qualifications on the application but we don't interview them for a leadership position, but we do for another position? So it's not that I'm against Jess at all. I think, like I said, she's a tremendous lady. I just want to protect the integrity of the process. And I'm not so sure the integrity of the process was followed necessarily here. And I don't want to put the district at risk because of that wasn't followed. So I'm just kind of taken back that we'd only interview 2 internal candidates, not look at anybody externally to be interviewed, because for whatever reason, I don't know. But I just find that a little bit unusual.
Yeah, and I can at least describe why the recommendation is to hire Jess. And I'm glad you mentioned that she's an outstanding candidate, because she is. As I was going through this process, I came to the strong realization that we needed to have someone who has direct experience, professional experience with Red Wing Public Schools. We're in the middle of the COVID-19 experience. We had just done a distance learning plan. We know that we have to do distance learning, or likely we'll have to do distance learning for the upcoming school year. We have curriculum that we just selected and will be implemented next year. That's the Wonders curriculum. We're also in the process of implementing math curriculum. Now, Jess had nothing to do with the selection of the math curriculum, but she's been working with teachers and others as far as implementation of that curriculum. So it really came down to that I felt the internal candidates would be the ones who could lead us into next year in the future. And so that's why we interviewed them. Jess undoubtedly stepped up to the plate this past year. She really led the distance learning initiative. We had 2 weeks to do it, and I think it has the potential of transforming everything we do in the school district. I'm not saying everything we did in the planning for those 2 weeks was perfect. Clearly, we need to change how we do distance learning in the future. But I do know that we need someone who understands where we are right now and the challenges moving forward with distance learning and so many other projects. So that's why I interviewed the 2 internal candidates. It was because they have direct experience with the school district, and we desperately need it right now.
Okay, if I may follow up, Madam Chair, just nod your head. Thank you. And I understand having continuity. However, I don't think this is fair to whichever the candidate is. If you have a limited people that you interview, I think you're doing an injustice to that person as you're going forward. But also with that, I don't think there's any school district in the state that didn't have e-learning, had to go to e-learning. So I think every school and people out there are facing the same type of e-learning issues as we had, maybe less, maybe more, but they certainly shared them. And I got more questions on a couple other ones on there, but I'll let somebody else talk for now, Madam Chair. Thank you for your time.
Janie was next.
Thank you, Pam. I guess some points I want to make. We're in a whole new state of norm here with hiring practices with COVID and everything. So I kind of back up, Superintendent Anderson on this. I think we needed somebody internally. Secondly, I guess I just am encouraged to know that we're revamping these positions all the time and constantly adding and changing it every year. I mean, hopefully next year we won't have to do this again. But we need to keep our top talent. We need to have people that have been proven to be best candidates. And I'm just in full support of Ms. Wickholm as our district director of teacher and learning. I just think she's someone that actually knows about equity when we talk about having calls and people encouraging us in certain strategies in this district. We have people that know how to do this, and we have to keep them here, and we have to let them rise up as leaders in our district. And I'm just really, to kind of end it, I guess, because we could keep on going around and around here, but Carson is our superintendent right now, and we have to empower him to make the best decisions for the people around him. And if you don't agree with that, then you have to think about Carson, not the people around him. But he's putting people around him with the best abilities for where this district needs to go. And I fully am confident that this is the right decision. So I just wanted to say that, and I just think that we need to support our superintendent in the decisions he makes for the administration around him.
Thank you, Janie. Holly.
Yes, I'm actually going to speak to the 4 new hires and the policies of the hiring process for the 4 new hires. I have some concerns about following that policy, and I was very discouraged today when our policy meeting was canceled because that would have been the perfect opportunity for me to ask some of those policy questions around how we score candidates on their resumes, how we score candidates on their applications, how we offer interviews to people, how we accept the fact if they responded to an interview offer. There's a lot of questions I have, and I have some concerns, much like Mr. Bryant. Janie, I hear you. However, I'm hearing from people in the community that are very concerned about some of the ways that this went down. So we're a board of policy making, and if we didn't follow our own policies, that's a problem. And I think that we should take a step back again and not get stuck on something because we have loyalty to a certain person. We need to have loyalty to process and to the way we do things. That's where we're held accountable.
If I can interject here just before you, Arlen, I have spoken with Superintendent Anderson about the process and scoring individual resumes and backgrounds. And again, I think we need to hire the best person for the job. And sometimes that doesn't always mean the most educated or the person who has the most experience. I think we have to be open to other ideas about what constitutes the right fit for a job, and confidence in people's abilities. Sometimes you take a complete roll of the dice by hiring the person who's got the most years of experience. You don't know. We don't know those people. Superintendent Anderson knows his hires, and I do think that this board, while I think it's great that we're questioning and wanting to make sure that we're following our procedures and our policies, because you're exactly right, Holly. We have to be following what our procedures and our policies say. And I also have to trust our superintendent to, like Janie said, we have to trust that he is surrounding himself with the best team possible for the best for our kids. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Arlen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am fully behind our choice, I think, for the, I shouldn't say it. I am fully behind our choice for the Director of Teaching and Learning. I think Jess will do a wonderful job for us. What I do have a concern for is I have never really seen exactly what the job description is going to be for that position. I have a concern that what we should be paying for that position, it looks like it may be reverting back to the District Directors Association fees, but I don't know when this was set up, what the qualifications were required of the former Directing of Teaching and Learning. And that's where I'm having I'd like to know how we arrived at the salary that we're getting, and if Jess is an at-will employee or how that fits into this. And those are just questions I have, but I am fully behind her hiring. Thank you.
And if you don't mind, Pam, I'll respond. Right now the Director of Teaching and Learning is part of the District Directors agreement. Joe Jezierski was the Director of Teaching and Learning at the time that agreement was set up. And it just makes a reference to Director of Teaching and Learning with a wide range of salary, anywhere from, I think it was, currently it's like $94,000, $96,000 all the way up to $136,000 in salary. So there's a wide range. And and by the way, he was a licensed principal, and I believe that was part of the position description at the time. So I want to acknowledge that. But there was a wide range for that particular position because there's so many different skills and qualifications that people can bring to the table. And I didn't want to be caught in a situation where we had a very narrow band of salaries for such a person. because it really does depend on a lot of different factors when we offer that salary. So, in Jess's case, she does not have a principal's license. And so that's why she was offered a salary that was, closer to the lower end of things rather than the higher things. That does not indicate her ability to perform. She is outstanding regardless of whether or not she has a principal's license. But I did lower the salary plan for her because of that. So again, it kind of comes down to, as far as the hire, I think it's critically important to find, the person with best ability, the best skills and knowledge to do the job. And I think all of us agree, unless I'm mistaken, I think we all agree that Jess Whitcomb fits that bill. There's no question about it. At least that's my assumption based on, the conversations that we're having here. She's an outstanding person, but because she doesn't have a principal's license, that's why I put her lower on the salary range. Arlen, did I get all your questions or did I miss something there?
I think you covered it, other than the question if it's at will or if we, that's one. And I guess my other question is, if that's the case, why aren't we hiring at the very bottom of the scale if there's not a principal's license?
Yeah, it's really, she's director of teaching and learning is part of a certified bargaining group. So I don't think it's fair to say that she's an at-will employee. However, she's the only person in that category. And so, we could make adjustments in terms of her employment at any time. So if there were 8 directors of teaching and learning, then that'd be a very different story. But, there's only one. And so that gives flexibility. But again, I have every reason to believe that she's going to be an outstanding hire and that we'll want to keep her indefinitely. So that's my assumption. And I think we're all confident in that.
Holly, you're next.
You're muted, Holly.
Thanks. Sorry. I want to go back, Kirsten. How many people applied for the principal job at Burnside?
Oh, probably about the same. I don't remember for sure. I'll say roughly 10 to 15.
More like 20?
I don't know offhand, Holly.
Okay. So how many people did we interview?
We interviewed 3 people.
Okay. I'm going to speak to our past hiring practices. In the last 10 years, we have hired white females between the ages of 35 and 50, and we have hired white males between the ages of 40 and 55 for director level positions, for student support coordinators, for administrative positions. That's what the community is speaking to, Karsten. To lump this into we will do better in the future, we're looking at what just occurred in the last week. We're looking at the hiring practices currently, and if we were to look at how we just hired again, it fits our pattern. So people need to trust that they're being heard. And when we put people off and say, well, yeah, that should happen, or we will do that, or the trust is broken, because they spoke to you before this hiring process.
What do you mean they?
The people, the community. The open letters to us as the school board. Back in to review this process.
Yeah, from the last school board meeting, as far as hiring more people of color. Is that what you're referring to?
I don't even necessarily want to say people of color. I want to say age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I'm not sure where you got the age information from. I don't keep track of ages here. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. I didn't hear you.
A community member called me with that information.
So a community member knows the ages of our employees?
the community member knows of some people that applied for the job because it's a small town and they know their ages. And so when I pointed out to you that we've been picking people between the ages of 35 and 50 who are female and 40 and 55 who are male, we have followed a pattern. So the community had asked if you would take a step back and review that.
Yeah, and again, I don't know where you're getting information about the ages of the people when we hire them. I'm sorry?
I just told you.
So, you know, we don't keep track of, at least I don't keep track of ages of applicants or the racial makeup of applicants, you know, or keep track of any other protected class, you know, that could be grounds for potential discrimination.
Which is
you
our
know,
job.
my goal is to, you know, so I can't speak on behalf of how old, you know, each administrator was when they were hired. In fact, I don't feel comfortable with even, you know, having you share that information publicly, to be honest with you.
Well, Carson,
I realize it's a wide range, but
everybody pretty much knows when everybody's birthday is. I could find out yours on Facebook, is what I'm saying. People in a small community. So that stuff is not confidential. In an HR perspective, I would never dream of asking an HR person that. That's not my information to get.
yeah, it's also not your information to share necessarily either.
Right.
And by the way, you know, and maybe that's just, I don't want to focus on that part because I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but your concern is that you want to make sure that our positions are open to everyone, regardless of age, regardless of, you know, the color of their skin or their racial background, their sexual orientation or gender, you know, that kind. I think that's where you're getting from. So,
policy, yeah. The equal employment opportunity policy. I'm looking at all of that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, the recommendation is to hire Jess because she is the best candidate for the job. I'm very confident in her abilities. You know, I've seen her work. It's been outstanding under very challenging times. And you know, if the board approves her hire, I'll be proud to be her colleague for a second year and beyond.
All right, Janie?
I guess just for clarification, I mean, obviously there's some questions about the process of hiring. So I guess Carson, can you maybe give us some more specifics about what your process was, just so that's clear to the board? Because I mean, agree. Of course, Holly knows I'm going to question everything like you are too, Holly, but I guess I don't understand where we're getting that a process wasn't covered like we usually have in past years. So, I mean, I know at time, you know, I've heard a little bit of in the past when I was chair of how we do things, but maybe Carson, can you just give us a description of how it was done this time, especially for the teacher and learning position specifically?
Sure. You know, and maybe it would be, yeah, I can focus on the director of teaching and learning. I was involved in at least 4 of the hires, so I could, you know, speak to each one in general terms anyway. So we did post for the director of teaching and learning position. We took applications from internal and external candidates. As I was determining who to set up for the first round interviews, it was becoming more and more apparent that we needed to have someone who understood Red Wing. And I realized other schools across the country actually had distance learning. We had one applicant from another state, Texas. We had an applicant who I think is still living overseas. You know, we had a good variety of people who submitted their applications. But I became convinced early on that we should focus on the internal candidates. And so I did meet with each one of them in a separate interview, just as sort of a screener to say, just to make sure that, that their vision of the position, would match what our school district is doing or moving towards. I thought they were both good candidates to at least be considered at the next level. And so we did call, or I set up an interview with 4 or 5 others, including a couple of teachers, one secondary, one elementary. Jen Grove was there. We had Kayla Bell as sort of, dean of students, or not a dean of students, a student support coordinator. And so we interviewed the 2 candidates, and the selection was made to offer the job to Jess.
And then interject there that I was also asked as the school board rep to be a part of that interview team, and unfortunately I could not be there that day. But I was able to review their information on my own. And then I did not meet with either of them in terms of an interview process.
Yeah, we did touch base though to, after Jess was selected by the committee, Jess, Pam, and I did meet. Really not, it was sort of, just to make sure that we're on the same page in terms of what she sees as our direction for the school district. And, she gave very good responses throughout the process. My personal interview with her, the group interview, and then discussion with Pam Rowe. I'm very good feeling about that. She definitely walks the talk, and she has great innovative ways of addressing things. She loves looking at innovation. She's not afraid to ask tough questions of teachers, administrators, including me and others. And I think that's part of her strong background with facilitation, because facilitation means that you're really working with a group to come up with something even better. And that means tough questions. So, if you want someone who, cares about our community, who cares about coming up with the best educational system that we can possibly put on the table, it's Jess Whitcomb. She is unbelievably good, and I'll support her the whole way.
Jamie?
I just gonna go ahead and make that motion to approve number 4 with the reassignments. I think we have a broad range of excellent employees here, all the way from secretaries to custodian, development to principals and all that. So I guess I'll just start that process of making that first motion to approve number 4 of the consent agenda.
Point of order, though. We have a motion on the table that's never been acted upon, which was to pass the consent agenda less items number 4 and number 6. So we probably should have approved that and then turned our attention to 4 and 6. So I know where you're going, Jeannie, but we got to make a motion.
Sorry, I thought we had already done that. Yeah.
No.
You're correct, Heidi.
Thank you for pointing that out. I thought we had already done it.
We just need to circle up a little bit and
Okay.
pass the majority of it, and then we need to make those other 2 motions.
So I guess I can make the motion to approve the consent agenda without 4 and 6, if that's what we needed.
Yeah, you did, and I have Mike down for a second.
Oh, okay. So,
And we
wow.
did. Okay.
No, we did not vote on that.
Okay. Well, let's vote on that then. You want to start, Holly? We're voting on the consent agenda minus 4 and number 6.
Yeah, I voted with the microphone off. Aye.
Okay. Jim?
Aye.
Janie?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
Arlen?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. All right, so the consent agenda passes that way. And then Janie, would you like to make your
Yes.
motion on here?
I'll make a motion then to approve number 4 for reassignments.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Michael, second.
Arlen, I think I heard you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Harlan was first.
Okay. Any other discussion? Holly, do you have, I see your name on the chat.
I just want to make a point about the Legislative and Policy Committee. Had we been able to review these policies at tonight's meeting, I would have felt much more confident in the fact that we had followed everything the way we are supposed to. And I cannot in good conscience agree to these reassignments with the last 4 hires that we've made.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up again, Holly, because I forgot to address that. The canceling the meeting today had nothing to do with trying to avoid discussion about hiring practices. Instead, I had neglected to post the meeting with a 3-day notice. And so I decided, it's better, we just shouldn't conduct the meeting. So I know the next scheduled one is in July. We may want to have a special session of the committee that would last longer, so we can review multiple policies, including proposed revisions by MSBA, which I'm still kind of waiting on, as well as some of the stuff that you're talking about. The hiring practices, possibly recruiting efforts, those kinds of things that are in our policy. And ways to improve them.
Mr. Bryant, you had a comment or?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Like I've said earlier, I think just as a fine young lady, I think the process, the integrity of it hasn't been followed properly, and I don't want to jeopardize the district, so I will be voting no. It has nothing to do with the job or the performance. I think Jess can or may do, or for however long she'll be here, 1 year or 20 years. So I will just state that for the record. And I'll have probably a comment later on in the meeting too about something else on it, but call the question.
Okay, so number 4 made by Janie to pass number 4 as written out and seconded by Arlen. Any other discussion? We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Bryant?
No.
Ms. Fair?
Aye.
Heidi?
Aye.
Arlen?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Holly?
No,
And chair votes aye. And then we had a question about number 6.
Thank you. I'll keep it kind of quick. But Carson, this is the first time I've seen furloughs on our consent agenda, and I just know in this time and age of lots of businesses furloughing, I guess, could you just, I know it's community ed, but can you explain why is community ed furloughing, and then why aren't we possibly looking at other furloughs in our district since so many other businesses are? I know I've been getting that question quite a bit. In the community, as lots of people are being furloughed. So if you could just explain that a little bit.
Yeah, if you could just give me 30 seconds, I need to switch computers because my battery's almost dead. So hold on just a second.
This is the time when Jim Bryant sings.
Karsten, would you mind if I spoke to it instead while you're switching computers?
Sure.
You don't want to hear me sing?
Maybe not.
I can take a hint.
One of the governor's orders is we can only furlough or lay off staff in fee-based programs like community ed.
Right.
So that's why we're looking at them only in community ed right now. The reason Dawn is looking at furloughing these staff is they have some summer duties that because of COVID-19 and coronavirus won't be happening right now. For example, Mr. Thiegeson, his summer is typically spent at the pool, and with the pool closed, unfortunately, there's not a lot for him to do this summer. Same with those other individuals. We're hoping the governor's recommendations change and we can start offering some more classes, but that's the reasoning for them being presented right now.
No, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Can I just add, with furloughs also keep people's benefits, which would be their medical and their dental. So, you know, it is helpful to, at no fault of the employees, you know, it's just not their fault. So you do save those things. Not at one point we wouldn't need to look at layoff, but this is where we need to go now to save resources and reduce expenses.
Well, and thank you so much. I know those are hard decisions that a lot of organizations are going to have to make, and thanks to those individuals. But I do appreciate that we're being very fiscally responsible on this too, because it just has to happen these days. So thanks a lot to all those individuals.
So with that discussion, I'd like to move ahead and make a motion to approve the consent agenda on number 6.
Thanks, and I'll second that, but I think Holly has a question.
I was just gonna make the, Heidi, once again, you are reading my.
Sorry.
Okay. Motion made by Heidi, seconded by Janie. Any other further discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote, starting this time with Ms. Fair.
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Derricks?
Aye.
Mr. Christensen?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay, and that does it for the consent agenda. Thank you, everyone. Resolutions, accepting donations and grants. Superintendent Anderson, are you back on?
I am.
Would you like
I
to
just
present?
have to, yeah, we have, hold on just a second. I'm still getting my packet organized here. So we do have, you know, one donation from the Jones Family Foundation for $425 for a student tracker subscription through the National Student Clearinghouse. And, you know, typically I won't go into great detail about, you know, one particular donation, but I think this is one example of how Every Hand Joins work has really helped us in a number of ways. Many years ago, we were expressing interest about how to track what our kids do after graduation. You know, do they get a job that they want, or do they go on to post-secondary, military, that kind of thing. And Every Hand Joined actually brought up the idea of, you know, subscribing to the National Student Clearinghouse because it tracks graduates and what they do after high school. So since then, we have the benefit of seeing the data that the Jones Family Foundation is paying for by subscribing to the service. So again, I just wanted to give that background information. That's the only donation with this resolution today.
And we certainly appreciate all donations, and thank you to the Jones Family Foundation for this gift. I need a motion to approve.
So moved. Bryant.
Mike Wolf, second.
All right, any other discussion? All right, roll call vote, starting with Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Mr. Christensen.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Ms. Fair.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you again for those donations. All right, next on the agenda is the Cooks Association Agreement.
Yeah, pleased to announce that we did reach an agreement with the Cooks Association. So the financial highlights include 2% increases on just step 5 each year. We're also eliminating step 2 to increase the base rate of pay. We made some adjustments to certification pay in the second year of the contract. We added a holiday to match what some other employee groups have. And we made some adjustments to career incentive pay. There are numerous language changes and reorganizing the contract. So if you look at the red line version, which is included as an extra on the school board page, you'll see lots of things crossed out, lots of things underlined. So we have actual changes in the verbiage, but then we also move things around. So you'll see some things crossed off and then they're underlined in a different section. So I know it took a while to start negotiations, but I'll tell you, once we got going, then we got her done. So appreciate the work of the committee as well as our Cooks Association representative.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'll just clarify one thing. He wasn't very clear on the holiday. The holiday was agreement for the second year of the contract only, so.
Correct. Thank you, Jim.
Janie?
Yep, I just want, as chair of that committee, I just want to thank, I know Holly was on for a little bit, but Jim and Pam and Carson, I think doing negotiations virtually, just want to thank that other group too, because it was a whole new learning lesson of how to do that. And we met a couple times a week and we're really efficient. So I just wanted to thank all those wonderful ladies. You know, we shared our appreciation as a school board group of all their hard work and flexibility with the summer lunches. And, you know, again, it's a really fair, reasonable agreement that was long overdue. So I'm glad we finally are looking at approving this and getting it done. But I think it really met some goals that we had and they had, again, so a good compromise. And I would go ahead and I'll make that motion to approve the Cooks contract. But it looks like Heidi might have something to say too, so I don't want to.
Well,
I did too quick.
We need a second.
Yeah, I'll make the second. And I just want to say, you know, without those folks on that staff, you know, where would we be serving kids the food? And I know we've mentioned that, but it never ceases to really hit home about how staff appreciation really has made our district work for kids. And I just want to say thanks again for them, and also thanks for your efforts at the negotiations table.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. And you know, one last thing I forgot too, if I can add it quickly, is that we did figure out the whole concessions coordinator position too, which I think was a really important thing. So again, it's all about having the right people in the right spots. And again, I think we have that here again. And so just excited about that. So if anybody else has anything to say, go ahead. But
The motion's on the table to approve the Cooks Association Master Agreement for the 1920 and 2021 contract years as presented. Any further discussion? We'll take a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Fair,
aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you. Moving on our next agenda item is the budget for fiscal year 2021.
And we'll have Jackie Paradis give the presentation.
Well, hello again. As the Finance Committee mentioned, we did decrease our enrollment by 130, which I did bring it up on the screen if you're looking for the budget. The unassigned fund balance, we will add about $86,000 to that fund balance. Our restricted general fund balance, we are going to use $666,000 of fund balance. The majority of that coming out of long-term facilities maintenance. This is using some money we've reserved over the years to redo the Burnside parking lot and paved surfaces around that building, giving the total general fund, we are using $572,000 of fund balance. The food service fund will use about $9,000 of fund balance next year. Some of that is going still to summer food. to continue serving lunches. Some of those more disposable products we've had to use that haven't had to use in the past, to go to containers, things like that. But Brent has also been forward looking at maybe some software upgrades in case we have to do meals in the classroom, which would allow students to pre-order meals should we need to do that. So we did include a budget line item for that as well, should we need it. Community service in total is looking at taking about $158,000 out of their fund balance. And then the remainder of the minor funds are listed there below. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Bryant.
thank you. I shared this with the committee, and I think we all were understanding of it. Taking money out of your fund balance to run operating costs is not ideal because you still have to make that up down the road. This budget didn't look at anything for any cuts. They found that the only thing they looked at when they presented this was taking revenue from something else to fill the holes based upon the shortage that we're projecting on the number of students that we have plugged in to be minus what we had, 130. So I was hoping that something would be done the last week, but it doesn't look like anything new has been done on it. For instance, we just approved buildings and grounds for $201,000. We have Kevin on board for 54, so $250,000 on that. I don't think my numbers that I found, we didn't spend that much before on buildings, grounds, and technology. And maybe we lose Mark on that, but I'm just saying, I wish we could have done more on looking at reductions, because a dollar is a dollar. It's not $1.10, and you have to fill those holes if those numbers don't come back on the students. And I wished we had a little bit more numbers presented in there, but we have not. So, thank you.
If I could just in real quick, the initial budget that we'd been working on did include some reductions. But I think what Jim's point is that after that initial run, then we decided to reduce our enrollment estimates by 130 kids, and I think that's kind of where you're coming from, Jim, that we didn't make additional reductions compared to the first iteration. I will say that as we hire some people internally, for example, in the custodial department, we're not planning to replace those positions unless they're absolutely justified and needed. So there, could and should be some additional savings there. Hard to quantify because we don't know if we're going to be in school or not. And, if we're in school, then we may need more custodial support, to make sure everything is clean. If we have distance learning, then, obviously we won't need as many custodians. So we're still working on it. You can also see, I included as an extra some of the cost savings that we have compared to the budget with regard to the new hires that we made. So we did make some savings there as well.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep looking at it.
That's great. And I'll just jump in and I'll let the others talk. I see others are jumping in here. Still, cutting a couple of custodians or paras, we still have if those numbers are true, 130, that's what we're presenting. You're not going to whittle away 1.2 million by cutting a couple of para hours or not filling a custodial staff or two. So, just wanted to share that with the board, the discussion we had there. And so thank you for your time.
Mike?
Yeah, we did do that. I thought was something interesting at the meeting that we had that we asked what other districts around our area were doing, whether they were counting on fewer students coming into the schools next year. And Jackie said that really nobody has been looking at cutting their student population in reaction to the budgets. So that made me wonder why they're not doing that. They think that everybody's back in school, or if they're confident enough that all their students will be staying with them. But I think a big number is a big question. Kindergartners, will people be sending their students to kindergarten even if the schools are open? And I share Jim's concern with the budget spending down of our bit of our reserve fund, but that is kind of we're trying to build up our reserve fund. At the reserve fund, yes, for down our they call them day funds. It could well pour on us, and we'll have to work with it from there. But I think that we work actually a very conservative budget. We know that we don't have a lot of money to move around, and in this time of to increase our reserve balance, we're spending it down a bit. We can only hope that we can maintain our educational system, attract coming to Red Wing and the Goodhue County area. I saw projections where they look like county is going to grow in the next several years. I can't remember the exact numbers. Not huge. You know, we're competing with the Twin Cities student students, and that's a part of our tight line where we have to pay people enough to attract them here, and make sure that we have enough programming to attract families to come down to Red Wing to live. So it's a balance, and we try to work on it, and we watch the budget as best we can. But I agree, I don't like spending down something that we're trying to increase. Hopefully we'll be able to turn that around in the next year or two.
Thank you, Mike. Heidi?
Yes. Jackie did mention there is some offset aid, but if we're calculating 130 students less, that's a decrease of over $1 million in our state aid. There is an offset aid if your enrollment declines that steeply, and we roughly calculated, I think Jackie said 200,000. So just to kind of lay some numbers on the see as our reality. I sure hope it's better than this, but as has been mentioned at the committee and by my other members there, that we do try to plan conservatively in the budget elsewhere. And then, of course, most of our costs are in personnel. And we've just settled a lot of different contracts. So there's not a lot of opportunity to do that for this upcoming year. But I think we want to be really careful knowing, being fairly confident that the following 2 years might be even thinner. So I think we kind of need to just kind of get in this habit, and now that there's tough decisions to be made. It's not a comfortable place to be in, but we're also supposed to be stewards of the long-term stability of the district too. So I just, it's not a fun discussion, but I think we're doing the hard work that's necessary.
Thanks, Heidi.
Arlen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This has probably been the most difficult time to try to make a budget, an accurate budget for an upcoming year. And I respect all the hard work that our staff and our committee has done on this budget. And the law requires us, I believe, to have an approved budget for the next fiscal year by July 1st. And I don't see any alternative but to approve this tonight. And I'm totally on board with that, given the circumstances that were dealt with at this time. But I do want to challenge our staff and our committee, finance committee, and our entire board as we adjust our budget going into next year, that we try to figure out a way to balance the budget if we can, or work closer towards it. Be it without the certainty of whether we can have sports or some sports or not this fall. There may be some savings in our coaching amounts of money, but it may be, I don't know what we can cut for personnel, because you have to have them there if we do have kids in school, but if you don't, you can't afford to pay them. It's just such a difficult process, but I think we're on track with what we're doing here tonight, and we're doing the best we can with what we have in front of us. But I just would like to have us, I think there'll be more certainty by fall where we're at, and let's go and try to adjust our budget accordingly once we get some definite things in, and make things proceed. That's my point. We can't do any more than that at this time, but I'm fully in support of what Jim is saying, that we need to try to get those holes plugged, and if we don't, the boat's going to sink, and we can't let the boat sink. So let's keep working on it, but let's move forward. Thank you.
And Holly?
I'm also going to approach this from a different angle. As a board, we're responsible for what is happening in the district, as well as what we're spending in the district. And we have spent a tremendous amount of money on people who have worked for us and then left us after we've paid for their educations. We've spent a tremendous amount of money on people after several years we've realized without oversight that they haven't been accountable to their jobs. They haven't produced like we've needed them to produce. And that's always an afterthought. And I'm going to challenge this board to hold us and our employees accountable by leadership, so that as we move into the next year, people aren't calling us and saying, well, why are you spending it on this? Haven't you looked at this? We didn't get the numbers for this. Well, we thought that was going to be we have a lot of work to do in managing how our money is also spent. So, yes, we have to cut. I don't disagree with that at all. But we also have to make sure that our dollars are being spoken for in a very equitable and professional and high expectations kind of way. And it has to happen.
I would agree with you, Holly, and I think that as we talk about our, the evaluation system that we have, hopefully that we can put together a better plan on how we can hold people accountable and move forward in that vein, because you're exactly right. We do need to get the best we can out of the money that we have been stewards to hold. So, well said.
Was that an agreement in the House there, Pam, on that?
It wasn't mine.
It was my dog.
Oh, okay.
Busted.
My son just came home from baseball practice.
Yay. Good. All right. Any other discussion about the budget for fiscal year 2021?
Pam, if I can just quickly make a quick comment kind of to piggyback Holly a little bit. Like I think it is, as a board, we need to come up with some goals or benchmarks of where we want it to be, whether it be test scores or whatever. And I know we've had some of those discussions, but I think we need to keep that in front of us all the time. And like she said, if we're not meeting those and results are not happening, then yes, we need to make big changes. So, but as a board, I think we need to get better at that. So I would challenge that maybe somehow in this workshop days in the months to come here in the summer, we can get some very specific goals down of numbers of where we're going, so that our staff has specific numbers, and those have to be realistic numbers of things that they can track and be able to properly do. But I think that's a great idea, so I would like to hear more about that too in the future.
We will definitely circle back on that. I wrote that down on the top of my sheet. And let's maybe discuss that tomorrow when we talk about future workshops and plans. We'll circle back on that, absolutely. All right, do I have a motion to approve the budget as presented?
I'll
moved.
make that motion. Okay.
Heidi made the
Slow.
motion. Any
Pick a
second?
winner. Okay. Was that Jim?
I think it was
Who
Mike.
seconded? Oh, okay.
I think it was Mike.
Heidi made the motion, seconded. by
I think I'm delayed.
discussion.
We thought you got on the train before I heard a train whistle in the
Oh,
background. Mike.
man, there's a lot of stuff going on here tonight.
I just might.
Any other further discussion on the budget? All right, we'll do a roll call vote, starting this time with, I believe it is Mr. Christensen.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
I think we could have done more, so I'm going to vote no after the personnel discussion we had earlier. And looking at those costs that they get. So,
Ms. Fair.
Aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. You?
Pam, could you announce that the motion passed and what the vote total was?
Absolutely. The motion did pass and the vote was 6-1.
All right, great, thanks.
Yep. Moving on, the resolution related to personnel non-renewals. Superintendent Anderson?
Yeah, we have this recommended non-renewal because of state law with regard to licensure of special education teachers. And so Susan needs to be non-renewed because she doesn't have the special ed license in the area where she's teaching. So we need a non-renewer, and then after the posting period is done, then we are allowed to hire her back, unless there's a qualified licensed applicant instead.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion to approve made by Jim.
Second.
By Holly. Any further discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote on the non-renewal of Susan Brandt, starting with Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Ms. Fair.
Aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Mr. Christensen.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So that resolution passes 7-0. Election notices.
Yeah, it's that time of year to provide the notice for the upcoming election. For the public to consider, we do have 4 school board member seats up for this November's election. We did include a sample guide from the Minnesota School Board Association as an extra to this board packet, and then we're also putting it up on the school district's website. So if people are interested in filing for the school board, they can at least start there to get some background information. So again, you can see the notice of filing dates for the election to the school board for this coming fall.
And can you just, for the public, Mr. Anderson, can you name those dates?
Yeah, the filing period begins on July 28th and shall close at 5 p.m. on August 11th. There are some questions about how people can file. Obviously, we need to follow state and local requirements for that. So we'll have more information before July 28th as far as can they come to which offices to file for candidacy.
Okay. we definitely would encourage those who have interest to definitely file between July 28th and August 11th. 4 seats are up for election, or some for re-election. All right, do we need to have a motion to approve the attached notice of filing for election to the school board?
So moved.
I will make that motion, or second.
I got Holly is moving and Mike is second.
Oh, Heidi, did you have something to add to that?
I did want to ask the superintendent something that came up during the regular legislative session about, it was a last minute addition to an election bill about, with COVID-19 and concerns in the fall, even for elections, whether schools, there was a motion made or an addition to a bill that said school sites should not be used as polling places. And so I'm not sure, I guess I'm just saying, keep an eye on that for the special session. It seems like they have a lot of other large issues to solve during this special session, so I don't know if that one's coming forward or not about school districts being polling places. I just wanted to kind of put an FYI out there.
Thank you, Heidi.
Mike?
Yeah, I might as well take this moment to say that I will not be running again for election to the school board. It's been a great experience, learning experience, and I've appreciated the whole time. It's people would say they would tell you that it's a thankless position, but it really isn't. You get to do a lot. You get to meet a lot of great people, and you discuss important issues. So I would highly recommend people of diverse backgrounds to look at applying for the board and getting on your feet and running, because it's a worthwhile experience.
Thank you for your years
Well, Mike,
of service,
thank you for your
Mike.
time and service. Thanks a lot, Mike, for all the years and work and extra meetings and long evenings and early mornings. So
Happy trails.
for all the big money, what is it, about 25 cents an hour you got? Something like that? Maybe 30?
Make it rain. Make it rain.
All right, so motion made by Holly. Seconded by Mike, is that correct? Arlen?
Yes, if I could just add, I want to thank Mike for his many, many years of service, and Heidi and her many years of service, because she has announced earlier, and Janie has also announced she won't be. I don't know how many years of experience we'll be losing unless some of you guys change your mind and decide to refile, but
32
there's
years.
an awful lot of years, 32 years of experience that will be leaving the school board based on those candidates that have announced, three people have announced they will not be running this fall. So, but at the same time, it's a great opportunity for other people in our community to step up and join this board and be a part and a contributor to what our district is, and what, not so much what it is, but to be a contributor to what our school district will be. And that's the important part. Step up and be a part of what our district will be, and encourage everybody to consider running. But thank you again, Mike, Heidi, and Janie, for your many years of dedicated service.
Thanks, Arlen.
Thank you, Arlen.
Well said. I definitely feel the same exact way. It's sad to see all of you go, and I wish you the best, and I thank you for your service. Okay, motion made by Holly, made by second by Mike. We'll start with Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Ms. Fair?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Derricks?
Aye.
Mr. Christensen?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
Geez, with all the with all the wording and all the news right there, I forgot what we were voting on for a minute there. I had to think.
Sorry.
So
All right. Human Resource Plan, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, I know that we recently approved the Human Resources Plan, and but since that time, there have been so many questions and comments about the need for additional administrative support at the high school, and so that's why I wanted to at least bring it back tonight. I'm not sure if it would meet the expectations of Robert's Rules of Order. But I wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page regardless of what we, decide to do. So again, I don't have a recommendation. Here's the issue. In my mind, there's no doubt that we need additional administrative support at the high school. It's a dean of students or an assistant principal, whatever that might look like. The problem though is that we have budget constraints and a lot of unknown situations, coming up for this year as far as distance learning or meeting in person, those kinds of things. So I wanted to bring it up as a discussion item, just to see what people thought, to make sure we're on the same page. Just discussion and possible action if that's what the board decided to do.
Well, and this is something that Superintendent Anderson and Mr. Derricks and myself have spoken about several times. And we also agree very wholeheartedly that we would like to see another person up at the high school. It makes complete sense for 5 grades up at the high school. We do need some more supervision and administration support up there. We did talk about a number of scenarios in which we could perhaps make some cost neutral changes within our district to make that happen. There are many different scenarios that we could do, but because we've been talking about budget constraints and a lot of questions in the future, I don't see that we'd be able to add a position with additional costs. But I am very curious and interested in having a discussion about how we could make that happen in a cost neutral way. And Jamie, I see your name there.
Yeah, I guess I just want to kind of ask, of course, we talked a lot about this in the personnel committee as we went over the HR plan. And I know it has been, the finances have taken the priority now, which they should be. But of course, we shouldn't neglect student need and staff needs. But I guess my question for you, Karsten, is as we discuss this and brainstorm, kind of on Pam's cost neutral idea, like if we went with one of these scenarios where you're talking a dean of students or an assistant principal, are there other positions in the district that, with all this shuffling or changing or, maybe looking at where needs are that we could eliminate or change to, kind of shore up some more finances? Or can you maybe just talk about other positions that have been shown and maybe not be as needed when talking about priority compared to the high school needs?
Yeah, that's a challenging question because, so often we're talking about tenured teachers with bumping rights, in the system. And so that has to be a big factor. We're also unsure about enrollment throughout the district. And so, we're hesitant about cutting back too much because then, we could actually, it could be counterproductive. And so as far as the middle school and the elementaries, I'm really leery about looking at potential cuts there. The high school, George might be able to come up with some sort of plan that would be cost neutral, especially if we had a dean of students at the high school. But I think a lot of that depends on enrollment counts and how everything shakes out as he registers kids for the fall.
And if I can just do one follow-up, I'm sorry if I may, Madam Chair, but, can you maybe specifically tell us what the actual needs are at the high school? I know we've heard a lot about them, but, for the public or others, like, is it disciplinary or, maybe this is an area we can ask other sectors of our community to help with in a way. I just throw that out there. We need to talk about what our needs are and try to find other ways to solve them too. So
Yeah, if, I believe that George Nemenich was on the meeting call earlier. If he's available, perhaps he could discuss what, his answer to your question, Janie.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Obviously, it's already been stated that, as a school with 5 grades, and I would also say it's the most active of our student bodies when you look across the district. So we're not just talking about your 7:15 to 3:15 type of school. We have things going on all the way into the evening. And of course that requires supervision. And that really requires people in a position to do that. And that's why I think an assistant principal is, and I got to say, we won the lottery here speaking to this at the end of, right after the budget conversation. So I know this is not an easy conversation to have, but I do think that's really a concern of mine is how much we have to cover, and with just the admin that's in place now, it's very difficult. Secondly, I think that when we talk about the high school, making sure that it's a safe environment for learning. We've talked about that before. We talked about that during the schedule discussions earlier in the year. And then really, I think probably this is maybe the most important. And if you're looking at some way to place value on an additional cost, this would be it, and that's performance management. When we look at the evaluate, I know that was talked about earlier, the evaluation system, but I really think that's the key to schools becoming better, more successful when we can see growth in our teaching staff, and we can also see management of that, so that we're getting the best bang for our buck, you might say. I hate to put it in economic terms, but that's kind of what we're talking here anyway. So so from that standpoint, I think really when you look at the value of what an assistant principal can lend at the high school, it's that ability to do evaluations. We wouldn't get that out of a dean or a student support coordinator. And I think really, to me, I can remember looking at this a few years back when I was a parent, but also one who was in an administrative role, so I had some bias, but I always felt like the high school was shorthanded, and I'm living that now, and it is hard to do successful performance management when and helping our staff to grow when we are shorthanded, or just kind of making it we're just okay. We could be better, is what I'm saying. And I think an assistant principal would make us a lot better than if we didn't have that, which is the case currently.
Thank you, Mr. Nemenich. Holly?
Mr. Nemenich, I don't disagree with you one bit. Unfortunately, for the last 2 months, the board has ignored you. You've been asking for help. We promised you help. Well, not promised, but we said we'd give you help back in March when we stated we would be looking at, or was it February, hiring assistant principal for you. It didn't happen. The board prioritized a request from the superintendent around what he needed. And in my opinion, we needed safety for children far beyond, and we needed support in special ed. And it didn't happen. So now we're in a budget crunch. Now we need these things, and we prioritized wrong. So as we move forward, I will keep your concerns and everything at the forefront. But I apologize that we didn't honor this and give the students and the families and you and the community what they needed when we said we would.
Yeah, I'm going to respond to that, Holly. You know, when you talk about, you know, that I prioritized what I need, we made several reductions in areas in order to appropriately provide some critical services. You'll notice that, you know, we have one less person in our teaching and learning department now because that was the right thing to do. It saved us money, and I'm confident we can move forward. We made some adjustments in our custodial department that was essentially cost neutral. And, you know, I could go on through every single item on the list. I know that you know, have always been a proponent of providing appropriate administrative support for all of us, you know, building principals as well as myself, and I appreciate that. I know that I have a request for my business manager, but, you know, I've always opted for, you know, a really cost-effective model, and it, you know, several other instances as well. So, you know, I'm not sure why you're trying to say that the board, you know, or that I prioritize my needs, because I don't think that's true. And just a reminder, you know, this was thoroughly discussed at the school board on multiple occasions after the personnel committee reviewed it. You know, the HR plan passed, and there were no amendments suggested. You know, at any time, Holly, you could have suggested also hiring or approving the HR plan with the addition of administrative support. And then finally, I do want to say one thing. George and I are in line, you know, with this. We've talked on numerous occasions. We both agree that there is a need for administrative support at the high school. We both realize that there are financial constraints. I encouraged him to join the meeting today because I think we need to let, you know, everyone know that the need is still there. And, you know, we want the board to make the decision as far as, you know, is it worth the additional money or not at this time? So anyway, sorry for babbling, but I just had to respond to your comments.
Arlen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've said it for a long time that I believe there's additional need for an assistant principal or that type of position at the high school. We have 5 grades, which is roughly 1,000 students there, comparing to middle school with 3 grades or roughly 600 students with a principal and assistant principal. Both of them have the same, but we have 400 more students at the high school. In elementary, we got a principal and student support or whatever titles we put up with other people helping the principals. But great people can make things happen well for our district. And I'm thankful for the addition of George here at the high school. I think a change in personnel at our middle or at our Burnside school will make great strides in correcting the issues we had in the last year. We've had this new human resource plan put in front of you, all of us. I'm not on board with the whole thing the way it's laid out. I would like to see us consider not putting that school psychologist position half-time at the Burnside school and let the school run with Jen Grove running it and have her tell us what she needs to make it work. And instead of us telling us we're going to do this so you can make it work. I think let her get into her position, run the school for a little bit of time, and if we have to make adjustments soon, I know it's difficult trying to find qualified people to fill these positions after the school year or after even the 1st of July. It gets difficult, but I don't want to jump into a bunch of hirings at this time, but I do want to get more assistants up at the high school. I think the difference between an 8th grade student and a 12th grade student kind of demands a different need of a person to work with them. But I think we can find these people. I really do. But I would really like to see us cut back on the Burnside school psychologist position. I haven't heard exactly for sure, but I said, it looks like we hired Jen Grove for Burnside School by itself and not as an alternative school to go with it. So I think things will work all right there. I really believe that. I believe in Jen. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Jim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I look at the leaders here, instead of, looking at what the problem is, I'm going to ask them, what is their solution? I used to do that when I was a cop. The guys come to me and say something, okay, what's your solution to the issue? You talk about revenue neutral, Madam Chair. Gave me some thought. For instance, we approved tonight, we approved the other day a priority one human resource plan for 64,000 and change, if I remember right, down the bottom, with 5,000 for grounds, building, and technology. I think we've spent over that 5,000 myself, but I could be wrong. I've asked for information and we'll continue to ask. Then I look at the 4 that we hired today, some excellent candidates. I'm not discouraging the vote of the board. They passed it. They'll go out there and hopefully they're all going to do a good job. The benefits for those 4 are $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year for 4 people for whatever benefits. Those are the areas where we can probably find some dollars if they really. So I just share that. I'll let them come up with. I think Mr. Nemenich is a bright man. He's the right person for the job, as I do agree with Jen Grove too. I think she's the right person out there. Alan Gaylor, one of the hardest working people you know. But if we want to make change, if people want more, we have to find the resources somewhere else. And so those are some areas that I would be willing to look at. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be friendly. It's going to be contentious. But to get something, sometimes you got to give up something. So thank you, Madam Chair, for your time.
So, Jim, if I could just ask a clarifying question. What were the 2 areas again that you wanted to look at reductions? Custodial and benefits, is that?
Absolutely no custodial. I didn't say that. I said your 4 people that we approved today, their benefit package totals $120,000, over $120,000 a year, $10,000 a month. So the other thing I will add, thank you for bringing that up. I don't believe in a business manager approach, but I think a full-time financial person would pay dividends for finding resources out there for us. Jackie does a tremendous job on the finances, but we get her 20 hours a week. She's posting checks for different things. I think we can spend our money less and get more hours and have somebody on board to oversee our financials on a weekly, 40-hour-a-week process. So since Arlen was asking for things, I thought I'd throw my Christmas list out there too.
So I know the benefits, I understand that. But what was the second area that you wanted us to look at more closely?
Oh, the buildings and grounds, you have $5,000 on the additional dollars that we passed, the board passed. You know, I'm agreeable to that. That's fine. But I think if you add up Kevin's salary and take away Mark's salary and add on Kevin's consultant, Alan's and Charlie's, you're totaling $255,000. That's more than what we were paying before by more than 5,000. So I think, and prove me if I'm wrong, but I think that's an area where we exceeded what the board gave you authority for.
Yeah, and we can certainly run the numbers with the latest figures. But the one part that, isn't recognized widely is that we also are eliminating a consultant position for technology. And so, that's, on the reduction side. And so I think all those things that you just talked about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, but I think those were calculated in the overall cost for the restructuring. But
Yes, they were. The other pieces we did reduce one of our tech department staff as well.
So I'll just piggyback on here. I mean, I asked for information. You all got the request. I had to ask a second time. So I think we just need to have, instead of talking about it today, all kinds of things, we just need to have a clear idea on how we want to get information, timely information back. And so we can make our decision. So I'm not faulting anybody for it, but I think we have to have that discussion at some point on, because they want us to make decisions. Let's get the right, proper information in front of us. So.
Yeah, and again, Jim, are you referring to the salary and benefits for new hires?
Yeah, the email I sent the other day, and I had to send again today because I still didn't have it at 5 o'clock, 5 after 5 something or whatever.
Yeah,
so.
the one you sent over the weekend, as I recall.
I realized it was over the weekend. I didn't. Yep. I didn't say that. I just said I still had to ask for it after 5 o'clock today. So.
Yeah, and I did include that as an extra on the board agenda packet. So it's not just for you or the board. You know, it's there for the public. I will say though that I only provided the information for the 4 new hires that we have. And you know, again, as a reminder, we have to negotiate changes with the district directors and with the principals. You know, the only place where we can make adjustments without a negotiation session would be for both Alan and Charlie. So, you know, if you want me to look at the benefits for those 2, you know, we certainly could. I don't think we should change those benefits, but, you know, I could certainly do so if you want.
I'm not saying that. You're not picking up on it. I'm saying is, I realize it's got to be negotiation, but if people want something, they kind of got to give up something. And there's only so many dollars. I'm not asking you to do anything to Charlie and Alan. Never said that in the world, and don't do that. Because I won't.
Yeah, and by the way, one thing that I should have mentioned during the budget discussion is that, you know, we did project potential salary and benefit increases for all of our employees when coming up with a budget. And I think that's one area we really need to review carefully over the next month or 2 before we, you know, settle any contracts moving forward. So, you know, I just want to be upfront. It's not just the number of positions, but, you know, obviously we negotiate and conditions change, and, you know, we need to make adjustments accordingly. I will say that the last time we had huge budget shortfalls in the district, or at least projected, our employees stepped up and really took very reasonable settlements at that time. So they've been good to work with addressing the needs of the district.
Heidi?
I guess I just wanted to share my opinion that I'm kind of in a wait and see mode. Number one, we approved a new high school schedule that I thought was providing more supervision. So I was looking at this as an eyes on the student discipline issue. So maybe I misunderstood the starting point. So the new schedule we approved was supposed to provide a different level of supervision. So I'm waiting to see what that looks like. Right now, we don't have definitive information about what opening in the fall looks like. So I think a lot of the people I talk to, both here and in context outside of Red Wing, is perhaps a hybrid model where we are not going to have our 100% of our student population in the building at any given time, because we'll be following the hybrid model. So again, I was taking this as a student discipline perspective. So I was not, I was a little surprised to see this on the agenda because we just don't know what's ahead. Certainly, I want to keep an eye on that. We all are concerned. We want our kids to have a positive experience in our district. But at this time, I'm really not in favor of adding something that we may not be able to sustain after this year. I'm afraid of, even if it's cost neutral today, is it building something else into our budget for the following year? And I keep looking at, you know, there's no more hopeful information coming out as far as economic recovery in the state, additional dollars coming from the federal level that would support what I feel is going to be a real funding and financial crisis in the coming years. So I'm really not in favor of creating anything else new this evening. That's all I've got.
And Mike?
Yeah, I've felt that we've been short administration forever. Since I got on the board, we knew that we were short of administration. We cut a lot just before I got on, and our student population has been decreasing, which has made it nearly impossible to try to add administration. In fact, the butchering that we do to the very jobs that all our staff do shows how we're trying to make up for all that we lack, and our staff does a great job doing that. It doesn't mean that it's the optimum performance that can be gotten out of, I believe it is the optimum performance we can get out of the dollars that we have been allocated. To take an unpopular issue or an issue that would be unpopular with some, it's gained traction recently, but I've been saying this for a long time. I don't think we should be paying for a police officer in the schools. I think that if the community wanted to step up and supply a police officer to the schools because it benefits the police department, I think that would save us several $1,000s. But I don't expect that to happen. I don't expect that to go through. But it seems to me ridiculous that a school district has to pay for the security forces of our community, and it just doesn't make sense to me. But I don't expect that to go through. But way too much of what's going on here sounds like personal attacks rather than objective ideas being presented. And that doesn't do our board, our district, our students, or our community any good. And we really need to work in a more civil way. And I think we do a very good job with what we have. I think maybe there is a way to move some money around, but cutting benefits is hardly an option unless we want to get into negotiations. And everybody's welcome to get into negotiations and find out how much fun that is. But it's these people have worked on the salaries that they get, expecting these benefits, and they're not going to be giving them up readily. I noted in the last meeting of the Finance Committee that the increase in salaries that were projected over the next few years were matched by the increase in the cost of the benefits, which is huge. It's huge money going through. There's no doubt about that. If we could find a way to limit that, that would be great. I guess I'll go into the meeting and see what's going on. I'll talk to Janie tomorrow and see what other information we've got. But it's we need, again, we're competing with the Twin Cities metro area for our teachers, and we cannot start cutting benefit teachers and staff. We cannot start cutting what we offer these people and expect to get the same high quality individuals that we get. It's maybe in the next couple of years there will be salary or contract level decreases and what's the money going out everywhere. That's a possibility. But it's not happening right now. And we can't just jump on a moment's notice. I would love to have another assistant principal at high school. I'd love to have an assistant superintendent to help Karsten out so that he could focus more on the education part of what's going on in our district. But we do not have that kind of money coming in. As I've said before, the people of the state of Minnesota have not been supporting education as they used to in the past. And we've been living on our laurels for far too long. And we're in a desperate financial situation as a state. Every other state is in the same situation. And we have to stop attacking each other and really figure out a way to work together and not try and point fingers. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mike. What I think might be a good way to proceed, and Jim, you said it really well, is instead of talking about what the problem is, what are the solutions? And perhaps we could ask Superintendent Anderson and Mr. Nemenich, and if you have others that you'd like to work with, to put together 2 or 3 or 4 ideas that you can present either to this board in totality, or if you wanted to start at the personnel. I know that we have talked about some options. We've looked at some ways that other districts have been able to fill that position. We also have to keep in mind what our referendum promises are, and we, of course, don't want to go back on any of those. But if we could come up with maybe a couple of different ideas and how much they would be, it doesn't mean that we need to act on them right away, but it would be nice to have some options to think about and to mull over. Because you're right, Heidi, a wait and see mode, you make complete perfect sense. Like, we have no idea what this fall is going to be right now. And so I think we do need to have some flexibility in our thinking as well. So if we could maybe come up with a couple of different options and thought, just food for thought. I know this has been on our priority list for a long time, and it's been on number 1, then it's moved on to 2, and then it's back up to number 1. We all, I think all 7 or 8 of us recognize that this is a priority for all of us, and yet we have to figure out how to make that happen. Holly?
I just wanted a quick comment. Mike, I think your point about the police officers was really good. Why don't they supply that to the school as a measure of safety, and then have a part-time police officer that, travels within the elementary and the middle school? Or does the middle school need one? I think that's a really important point, and I'd never thought of it from that perspective. So I just want to thank you for bringing that up.
All right, any last comments or thoughts on this? There is no recommendation on the table at this time, but I would encourage our administration to keep chiseling away at this and maybe come up with some really good ideas on how we can make this happen when the time is appropriate.
Madam
Yes.
Chair? Sorry, I was unmuted here. If somebody took the fact that I was trying to attack somebody, that was the furthest thing from my mind. I'm just pointing out things that we can be explored and looked at as to ways to solve a problem and that's all I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to pick on anybody. So if that was taken that way, I did not mean it at all. So I just thought of some way, instead of us sitting here trying to figure it out, put it back on the leaders, come up with some financial way to come up with a break even, or however you put it up. You said it before, Madam Chair. So
Cost neutral.
Yeah.
Cost neutral. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, if we can, then let's move on to the next agenda item, Jefferson School. Mr. Anderson? Mr. Anderson, can you give us an update on Jefferson School? Did he
Sorry
get bumped
about
out?
that. I also muted my microphone.
Easy to do.
Yeah, so as everyone knows, we did sign a purchase agreement on February 3rd for the sale of Jefferson School. There was a First Amendment approved dated March 30th that provided an extension when the due diligence period can take place. And so the due diligence period ends approximately August 3rd. That's 180 days from February 3rd. So the question came up is, where are we with the process? And I have communicated with Mr. Patterson 2 or 3 times over the phone. We were hoping to meet before this meeting so he could explain his thinking in additional ways, including the possibility of a written proposal for us to consider. Unfortunately, that meeting did not take place, and so I did put another call into Jim to try to make arrangements. So again, the due diligence period ends August 30th. And I know Mr. Patterson's been thinking of all sorts of different options and possibilities and partnerships and those kinds of things. I really hesitate sharing any of that thinking publicly because, you know, he's still formulating options and a specific proposal. But I wanted to give you an update as far as where we are with it.
Questions or comments? All right, well, seeing none, then we definitely appreciate that update, and we will look forward to what you hear back from Mr. Patterson.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I can't tell if I'm muted. It's not my phone. My thing doesn't work that well. Would we get an update at the next operation meeting? I'll be the one to say it. This issue and topic has went on way too long. Sure, we gave them the extension, but it's went on way too long. It's approaching a year and a half since we made the decision to sell the school. So I'm very interested as to why it hasn't happened, and I'll wait to hear from your meeting with Mr. Patterson as to why.
Short answer is you bet. We can add it to the next operations committee meeting agenda.
But I know Holly's name is on there, so but if I could maybe if that report could also be sent to everybody, just with the complexity of this issue, I'd appreciate it for those that aren't on the operation committee, since this is a pretty important thing we've been working on. I know that's appropriate enough.
Right, and I was just thinking he was going to present some of the operation to bring to the board. That's all. I was not trying to eliminate the whole board.
No. I just mean whatever after the meeting with Mr. Patterson, if we could just, again, on the idea of what the delay is, I know I would be interested in that too, so.
Yeah, certainly I can memorialize, you know, the conversation in the board meeting notes or the committee meeting notes that'll be shared with the board. And then I'm sure it'll be a topic at the next school board meeting as well.
Okay. Thank you. And then our final agenda item is future topics and upcoming meetings. I have that you are meeting as a finance committee on the 22nd at 4:45.
Yes.
Yes. And then we have our board workshop scheduled for June 29th. Currently, the schedule is to talk about our board self-evaluation, which MSBA would like all of us to be in attendance. And I believe that Holly is no longer able to be with us on the 29th. So, Mr. Anderson, is there another topic that we could slide into this month's workshop? I'm sure there is.
Yeah, you know, by then we'll have some guidance from the governor in terms of, you know, possibilities for distance learning. You know, we could certainly share the latest information that the admin team has, and then,
Okay.
you know, get feedback so we can kind of refine our directions.
So if we could move the workshop on the 29th to an update on distance learning, that would be great. The next school board meeting is scheduled for not till July 20th at 6 p.m. So that is, that's more than a month away from today. And so I'm going to throw it out there that we should perhaps think about either adding a meeting on the 6th or the 13th, and it could be just an abbreviated meeting, at least to get the consent agenda passed, and any other information. Arlen, did you have something to add to that?
I was just going to throw out the idea of, I didn't know what you're doing on upcoming meetings, but The other option would be to post a meeting before the 29th, to have a real short meeting then. Right now, we are at a 5-week span between now and our next scheduled school board meeting. So 5 weeks is a long period of time. And with new hires and other stuff, there might be a need for something before then. And I'm certainly open to anything else. But the other comment I want to make is, it's very essential that our school board get this evaluation done, but I actually think the priority is maybe to get an update of what our school might look like with COVID this fall, if we can get some guidance in the next 2 weeks. So I'm really looking forward to a possible change to that format if we can't make the other work. I think it's time to start talking about fall at the end of June. That's only 2 months before the start of school. A lot of things could be talked about. Do we still want to continue with the plan to start here a week early with school in August, or should we be pushing it back a week and maybe things will be better? All those things would be a great topic on the workshop. So I really would be very happy to mix those two, or reverse those two in order if that came up to that.
Well, we're going to have to at least, if we can have an update for distance learning at the end of this month, that would be great. We're going to work with MSBA on seeing if they're available on July 27th to facilitate our board self-evaluation. So then the next question is, do we want to add either a school board meeting on June 29th prior to that workshop, or do we want to add a second meeting in July?
Are we, Madam Chair,
Yes.
are we going to continue to meet virtual or in person?
Well, we
In July.
decided last time that we met that we were going to continue talking about it on a a meeting by meeting basis.
Right.
And I haven't really heard any new updates or new openings right now happening in terms of City Hall usage. So I am under the impression that we should stay virtual at least through the end of July.
Well, I think I kind of like Arlen's suggestion about having, even if it's a short meeting on the 29th, just to approve claims or anything that has to be wrapped up before the end of the year, and then go into the workshop. So if things could be brought before us on the 29th, that'd be I like that suggestion. Something that's clean and not, anything that needs some further discussion, just push out to July if necessary, or if it needs to be brought forward, it needs to be brought forward. Simple as that.
I agree with that plan.
Okay. So if we had the workshop at 6 p.m., should we have a school board meeting at, say, 5?
5:30?
Hopefully 5:30 should be time, right?
Right.
That will force
Short.
us to have nice shirt.
Yeah.
So
Essential business.
yeah, school board meeting at 5:30 p.m. on June 29th, followed by a 6 p.m. workshop on fall plans for our district. And then we will have a school board meeting on the July 20th at 6 p.m. And then a week later on the 27th, we will have a school board self-evaluation, hopefully led by MSBA. I will call them in the morning and see if they're available.
All right.
And then finance meeting next week.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else I'm missing?
Yeah,
What's
no,
that
I
school
think
board
that,
evaluation date?
July 27th.
What was that?
July 27th.
Yes.
Okay.
and I'm
Thank
fine
you.
with whatever. I really do think that school board evaluation piece would be much more beneficial if we are all in attendance together. So I just throw that out there, that I understand we need guidance and to deal with what's going, what's open and what MSBA is comfortable with. But I sure think that that's going to be a hard discussion to have be productive when we're on virtual. I just throw that out there.
And maybe things will be different by the very end of
Right.
July, so we can maybe put an asterisk by that, because right now MSBA is not sending their folks out to have in-person meetings.
Exactly, yeah. Thanks, Pam.
So,
Right.
yeah, so we have to just see how things play out. So that can be determined in the future, but yes, the next few meetings will be virtually.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
She actually told me they're not going to do anything until the first of the year that isn't virtual.
Interesting.
Yeah, she said
Okay.
they've been kind of directed that everything from here until January is virtual.
Okay, well, there you have it then.
So I don't know if that means this group connects and she's virtual, or we're all virtual. That's what I think about.
Okay, well, I will connect with them tomorrow and we'll make a plan for that workshop at the end of July. Anything else to highlight on the calendar?
Arlen, are we have an operation meeting in July, or are we gonna pass? Or as needed? I see 8-3 is the next one scheduled.
I think at this point, we were scheduled to not have a meeting in July, but I think if there's anything that comes up, we should be meeting. I think that's the way it was left. After our last meeting, we weren't going to meet in July unless something came up, and certainly that could happen.
I just want to make sure had my calendar correct.
That's where I understand we're at right now.
And Arlen, can we connect this week sometime about GCED?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Anything else on meetings? Then I am looking for a motion to
How about a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn?
That was Mike.
Mike.
I'll second.
That was.
Jim seconds.
Jim. Any other discussion? Have to have a roll call vote. We'll start with Ms. Fair.
Aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Mr. Christensen.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Meeting is adjourned 8:39. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Good
Have a good night.
night.
Good night. Thanks.
Good night.